All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for asking me to be here. I always appreciate it.
So I want to get started with the government shutdown here, because this week we saw some reports say that Wisconsin's food share program is going to run out by November, and that would impact roughly 700,000 Wisconsinites. Do you see the state stepping in to cover some of those costs in the interim?
Well, let's first hope that common sense prevails, that Republicans and Democrats can come together. I didn't like it when Republicans threatened to shut down the government over time when under President Biden and Barack Obama. I certainly don't like it now that Democrats are threatening, as though the first thing they have to do is reopen the government. So my hope is that Democrats realize that the way to negotiate is not by holding a gun to someone's head, but actually to sit down at the table and try to find a common sense solution. I don't think it's right that they want to offer benefits for people who are here illegally. I think that's crazy, and most Americans do too. So shutting down the government and having people not get their food stamps or their Medicaid or any of the different programs is kind of preposterous. So I can't imagine the state could step in, because there's so many programs that the federal government funds. We don't have the resources to do that. So my hope is that they figure a way to get open.
So there's no plan for if that does happen?
I think it's super unlikely. I mean, I can't say never, because we have to talk to our caucus and see where everybody's at, but I think it's unlikely, knowing the world that we are in, and that chances are by the time that we're back, the shutdown will hopefully be over.
And do you have any other concerns with the impacts that the shutdown could lead to in Wisconsin?
I don't think so. I mean, for the most part, I think many Wisconsinites have seen 3 weeks go by and it really hasn't impacted their lives very much. Now, do I want the federal government to function? Of course I do. But I think for the vast majority of people in our state, they're not really seeing any sort of an impact that really makes them realize it's even going on for the most part. If it wasn't in the media, I think most people wouldn't even realize it. Do I feel bad for the workers who aren't getting paid but are still going to work? Of course I do. My stepson is actually in the Marines, and he's not getting a paycheck either. So there's people all across the country who are not getting paid, and my hope is that they will come to that common sense resolution so that everybody can get what they deserve.
Have you had any conversations with folks in Washington about what this could look like?
Not really. I mean, again, I kind of feel like this is a federal issue at the state level. We're doing really good things. We try to find consensus, and I think that I don't want to emulate a lot of things that happen in D.C.
And I want to move now to a different topic, a little bit of political violence, because this week we saw a man be charged for stalking Wisconsin State Supreme Court Chief Justice Jill Karofsky. Is political violence something that you have seen more of?
There's no doubt about it. And again, it's people on both sides, far right, far left. You know, unfortunately, it's happening at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. And again, I don't feel like it's any one person's fault. It's happened before Donald Trump was in office. It's happened since he's been in office. You know, this kind of craziness has been around for a while. And I think we just need to all be aware of it, that I can disagree with somebody who I think is vehemently wrong, but I don't have to hate the person. I have plenty of friends who are Democrats. I think they are misguided, but I don't think they're bad people. And I would say I wish more Americans could look at it that way, to say, look, I didn't vote for Joe Biden, but when he was president, I hoped he was successful. And I wish more people who despise Donald Trump would say, look, I don't particularly like him as a person, but I want the country to succeed. I think they're kind of rooting for failure. And I think that really goes into the world where we are right now, where people are so angry that the only way they can take it out is by saying hateful things to people who should be their friends or neighbors, or by saying something that is vile and repulsive to an elected official that doesn't deserve it.
And is this uptick concerning to you?
It is concerning, and I would say I don't even know if it's necessarily an uptick. I think it's just been this way for a while. I mean, as we were mentioning off camera, I have been the victim of it for some time. I don't like it, but it's not new. It's just part of the job, unfortunately. And you have to have a thick skin. You know, I want to make sure that people are safe. So we have a Capitol Police, and I think they do a good job. So I feel like we're in an okay spot in Wisconsin. But again, we could all turn down the rhetoric, and I think the world would be a better place.
And talking about measures to prevent some of this here, last month you mentioned being open to the possibility of providing security for lawmakers' homes. This was after Representative O'Connell received death threats after speaking in favor of banning pride flags from state buildings. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that could look like?
Yeah, one of the things that we've looked at is every legislator gets an office account that they are able to spend on keeping in touch with their constituents, having a cell phone, you know, all the things that you would do to do your job. So I'm open to the idea of saying if people want to use part of their office account to install a Ring doorbell or put something on their house to make them feel safer, I'm good with that. I will say that by and large, I really believe that if somebody wants to cause you harm, they're not necessarily going to do it just at your house or just at the Capitol. You have to be aware wherever you are. So I don't want to make any certain place into a fortress or make people feel like a false sense of security. We need to be aware wherever we are. So if we could do little things like putting on a Ring doorbell or putting in a security system and that makes people feel better at their home, I'm open to that.
So it seems like there could be a wide range of things to help people feel more safe.
Yeah, I would say so.
And so there's no necessarily set budget or expense for what that could look like?
No, it would kind of be up to each legislator to look at for themselves because they all get an allotment. They could decide to spend it. Some people might say say, I don't want to spend any money on it. Other people might want to have a security system. I'm okay with that.
And so I want to move now to the 2026 midterm elections, because we've seen the Republican Party lose some big statewide races in the past couple of years, the governor's office as well as the state Supreme Court. How do you see this upcoming election playing out?
Well, first of all, I think that Wisconsinites, we are a purple state. We have been for literally a generation. We have had people on the right, from Tommy Thompson to Ron Johnson win. We've had, of course, Tammy Baldwin and Tony Evers win in the same time period. So I think we truly are that 50-50 state. It's good for our democracy. I don't have a problem with that. Going into 2026, I think we're probably going to be more of the same. The election's not going to be decided by a landslide. It hasn't in a long time, and it probably won't for any time in the future. So it'll be a competitive race between the Republican and the Democrat for governor. There's no U.S. Senate race this time. We have a couple competitive congressional races. Again, those are at the federal level. And at the legislative level, really for the past 30 years, Republicans have pretty much dominated in the assembly under maps drawn by the court, drawn by the governor, drawn by one side or the other. So I'm pretty confident we'll keep the assembly. Again, it's all about people listening, doing good things, and we have a good record to be proud of.
And you said you're pretty confident that you'll keep the assembly, so a narrow margin doesn't seem to concern you?
It's narrow, but again, we've had that before. It's 50 for Republicans and 45 Democrats, so it requires compromise. It's what we've had before. So we had a negotiated budget where I didn't get everything that I wanted. We probably spent more than we should have, but we did get some tax cuts, which Governor Evers didn't want to do. So I think in the end, it was a compromise between the two sides, and that's what most Wisconsinites want.
And so if you were to lose the Senate next year, does that concern you for your House?
Anything's possible. I think we have a good working relationship between the Assembly and the Senate to say we want to stand up for the half of Wisconsin that's a Republican. I think most people don't necessarily want to have Democrats in charge of all of state government. We have an 8-year track record where when Wisconsin was united under Republicans, we had low unemployment, taxes were going down, lots of jobs being created. I don't think anybody wants us to turn into Minnesota or Illinois or Michigan, where high unemployment, high taxes, lots of regulation, and people fleeing the state. So hopefully people will look and say, let's keep balanced government or give Republicans a chance to turn things around from where they've been.
And I want to get your take on some statewide races too. What do you make of the Republican field so far for governor?
I think we have great candidates, and that's what I've said. I think we have two people running, one with more local government experience, one with more state and federal experience, both good men. I have no concerns about either of them being the nominee, so we'll let them go through the primary process, talk to voters, see who they connect with. On the left side, or the Democrats, I know all of them. I've worked with all of them in one capacity or another. Many are former state legislators. They are all the same person with a different skill set. They're all very liberal. They all spend a lot of time in Madison or Milwaukee, and they all want to turn us into those places that I don't want us to be, either Minnesota or Illinois. So I think that most Wisconsinites, when they have the chance to view both candidates, they'll look and say, probably giving the Republican a chance after we've had years of Tony Evers, probably what's going to happen.
And do you think that there's any other Republicans that could get into the governor's race that could pull attention away?
Possible. I mean, I haven't talked to any that are going to run, so I feel like the field is in some ways pretty much complete, but if somebody wants to run, it's democracy, more power to them.
And do you know who you're going to vote for yet?
Oh, no, it's way too early. Yeah, way too early.
And to get your take now on the state Supreme Court race, we just saw the first conservative get into the race, Maria Lazar, about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. But Justice Rebecca Bradley, when she announced her decision not to run, had said that the court didn't take her warning about concerns she had about the power shift on the court. Is that something you're concerned for as well?
I am. I mean, look, the Supreme Court is supposed to be the people who call balls and strikes, right, like an umpire in the baseball game, and I feel like they've made the decision that they're going to be on one team, which is to side with the executive branch. Look, for people who went to the No Kings protest or those who don't like what Donald Trump is doing, I don't know why you would want to create a king in the East Wing, and that's what the Supreme Court has kind of been doing, taking away the natural checks and balances that have been here long before I was born. These are not new things. They took away the power of the legislature to object to rules in a meaningful way. They took away our ability to kind of ensure that the money being spent by the state is done so wisely. So I feel like they've really chipped away at the ability for the two branches to be equal, and that's bad for all of us, no matter who is on the court.
And so you're hoping that the ideological majority doesn't shift to a 5-2?
It would be awful for the state. I mean, we've already seen far too much power going into the hands of the executive. And again, if you don't like it at the national level, I don't know why you'd want it at the state level. So for the people who are going to vote for the liberal candidate, I fear what you're giving us, which is one party control in the executive branch, which isn't good for anybody.
And I want to move now to some things we're seeing come out of the legislature here, which is medical marijuana. A Republican bill to legalize medical marijuana was up for public comment this past week. Now, lawmakers debated whether the provisions in a bill before the Senate Committee on Health were strict enough to gain the support of a majority of Republicans in both the Assembly and the Senate. Does that have your support?
No. As you know, I've been a supporter of medical marijuana. I want to do it in a very limited fashion. We heard from the testimony, law enforcement has concerns, the medical community has concerns. I'm not so sure how much effort was put into trying to have a restrictive version. Look, I have sympathy for someone who has a true medical condition to be able to say, if they're taking narcotics, why would they not be able to do something like this if it's done in a safe way? That's why I wanted to have something where it's very limited, very small, but only for people who are truly sick, like it is in some other states. This version looks like it's far too expansive for me. I don't want it on every corner. I don't want it to be super easy to get. I think it should be limited circumstances for a small number of people who need it, not a backdoor way to recreational marijuana.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to touch on that too, because that's something you said before, is you don't want this to open up that recreational marijuana. Is that you think this bill could potentially do?
The way I look at it is it's my biggest concern that I do not want this to be a precursor that 2 or 4 or 6 years from now, it becomes the way that we have medical marijuana. We have recreational marijuana. So I think there's a way to get it done. It requires people of good faith to sit down and negotiate. We'll see if that can happen.
Now we're seeing also some hemp legislation go through right now, and basically the way these kind of work is it created like a backdoor, a loophole for hemp providers which can have intoxicating products. So this kind of looks to walk that back. Does that have your support?
Yeah, I mean, some version of it. I mean, I've seen the version that looks pretty good to me. The idea would be that just like if you want to go and buy alcohol from a grocery store or a liquor store, you have to have an ID that shows you're 21. Same thing for THC. You have to do it in a way that's clearly labeled so people know that 10 milligrams means something. It doesn't just mean a different on every label that you see. So I think we should pick a level that it can't be higher than. That's what they do in most states that have regulated it. So I think there's a way for us to do it, and I feel like this is a good first step for the discussion, and now we've got to listen to our colleagues and see where they are.
And I also just wanted to open this up to ask if there are any other priorities for your assembly right now.
Well, when I talk to people, they are most concerned about the costs of everything, from electricity and what we're paying for power to food in the grocery store. So we've tried to address some of those. I mean, as you know, in the budget, we have no sales tax on electricity, which is the first thing that'll help families. We put in something for retirees to be able to not have income tax on the first $48,000 of your retiree earnings. That's going to help keep people here. So we've got to keep focusing on affordability and cost, and it's not just about figuring out how much the government is going to give you. It's about trying to reduce costs. So we have a package of bills going through on housing to try to reduce the cost of starter homes so we can build more first generation homeowners. I think that's great for all of us. Hopefully that'll get to the governor's desk as it works its way through the Senate to get signed into law too.
So you're pretty confident that that'll make its way to the governor?
I hope so. I mean, it passed the Assembly, good bipartisan vote, so my hope is it gets through the Senate too.
Wonderful. And kind of just a last question here for you today is, you previously said you are considering not running for re-election. Where does your decision stand now?
As I said before, I'm not decided. I mean, I go back and forth on a regular basis. I talk about it with my wife, but I won't decide till sometime in January. You know, I enjoy the job. I think that we are doing good things for the state, and I certainly don't want Democrats to be in total control. So I want to make sure that all those things stay in place no matter what I decide.
And on upfront, WISN's upfront a couple of weeks ago, you said that you would be excited potentially to work with the new governor. Yeah. Would that kind of sway your decision depending on who may get that seat?
It certainly could, but again, I have to make a decision before we know what that's going to be. So I'll make a decision in January, like I said, and figure out where I'm going to go next. But my hope is that if I run for re-election, that I get to work with a Republican governor and keep things going in a better direction. If I don't, I hope the same thing happens.
Wonderful. Well, that's all I have for you today. I appreciate you taking the time
Thanks.
to
Nice
chat
to meet
with
you,
us.
Elly.